What if the career advice your parents gave you was perfect for their generation, but it's completely insufficient for yours? Just sit with that question for a second, because most of us never actually question it. We inherit a story about how careers are supposed to work, we accept it as common sense, and then we spend years feeling confused when reality doesn't match the story. So let's imagine something together. Imagine graduating at 22. You've spent years studying. You finally have your degree in your hand, and it feels like a key. You learn one profession, you get hired, and slowly, year by year, you become more experienced. And somewhere along the way, you start to expect something very natural, that your experience will keep becoming more valuable, automatically, the longer you stay in the game. But then something shifts. Technology changes, your industry changes, your company changes the way it operates. Even your customers start expecting something different from you. And suddenly, the exact knowledge that once made you valuable isn't quite enough anymore. It's not that you became worse at your job. It's that the ground underneath your job quietly moved. So welcome to the end of Learn Once, Work Forever. Concept and mindset episode here at Code Your English YouTube channel, where improving your English goes hand in hand with improving the way you think, work, and grow. In today's episode, we're talking about something that could completely change the way you think about your career. The world of work is changing faster than ever. And the skills that helped you succeed yesterday may not be enough tomorrow. So if you're building a career, changing careers, or simply wondering how to stay valuable in a rapidly changing world, stay with me, because this conversation isn't just about getting a job. It's about learning how to remain relevant for a lifetime. And before we go further, here's a small habit I want you to build into this episode. Every time I ask you a question, don't just think about the answer in your head. Say it out loud in English, even in a short sentence. This episode is about adapting, and one of the fastest ways to adapt your English is to actually use it while you listen, not just absorb it passively. The career promise we were taught. For decades, many of us were taught a very specific formula for a good life. Go to school, get a degree, find a stable job, become experienced, stay with the company, earn more money over time. Eventually, retire. It sounds almost like a recipe, doesn't it? Follow the steps in order, and the result is guaranteed. And inside that formula was a quiet assumption. That experience compounds automatically. That the more years you put into a profession, the more valuable you naturally become, the way a savings account grows just by sitting there collecting interest. This idea even has a name. We could call it career stability through specialization. The belief that if you go deep enough into one skill, one industry, one role, you build a kind of permanent fortress around your career. Now here's the thing. I don't want you to think this model was foolish. It genuinely wasn't. It made a lot of sense in an environment where technology changed slowly, where professions stayed relatively stable for decades, where companies had long, predictable career ladders, where employees often stayed with one organization for 20 or 30 years, and where knowledge simply had a longer shelf life. If you learned accounting in 1975, the core of what you learned was probably still useful in 1995. That's a 20-year runway. Try saying that sentence out loud. Knowledge used to have a longer shelf life. Good. Keep that phrase. We'll come back to the idea of a shelf life very soon. What actually changed? So if the old model made sense, what happened? A few forces arrived, almost at the same time, and together they changed the rules. First, technology. Software updates constantly. Artificial intelligence is reshaping entire workflows, not just in tech companies, but in marketing, law, healthcare, education, and beyond. Automation is quietly changing which tasks are worth a human's time and which aren't. Second, globalization. You're often not only competing with people in your city anymore. In many fields, you're competing with talented people anywhere in the world. Third, remote work. Talent can now work across borders almost as easily as it works across the street. A company in New York can hire a designer in Nairobi and a developer in Manila without blinking. Fourth, and this is the one people talk about the most right now, artificial intelligence is beginning to affect not only physical or repetitive work, but knowledge work too. The thinking, writing, analyzing kind of work that used to feel protected from automation. Microsoft's Work Trend Index has described exactly this: AI reshaping knowledge work, and leaders increasingly expecting employees to work alongside AI agents rather than instead of them. And finally, consumer expectations and business models are shifting quickly. Customers expect faster results than ever, and entire industries can transform within just a few years, not a few decades. Notice that none of these forces are really about you personally failing. They're about the environment shifting underneath everyone at the same time. The emotional core. Let's slow down here because I want to speak directly to something a lot of you might be feeling right now. Maybe you're thinking, I studied for years, I got my degree, I got a job. Why do I suddenly feel behind? If that's you, I want you to hear this clearly. You are probably not lazy, and you're probably not failing. It's very possible that you're simply using an old career strategy in a new economy. That's a completely different problem, and it has a completely different solution. Being lazy means you need discipline. Using an outdated strategy means you need a new map, not more effort on the old one. So here's the emotional message underneath this whole episode. You are not necessarily failing. The rules may have changed. Say that with me. The rules may have changed, not me. That single sentence can quietly remove a huge amount of unnecessary guilt. Your degree has a shelf life, but your ability to learn doesn't. This is one of the most important distinctions in this entire episode. So let's be precise about it. I am not going to tell you that degrees don't matter. That would be lazy thinking, and honestly, a little dishonest. A degree can absolutely give you a foundation. What it cannot do is guarantee permanent relevance for the rest of your working life. To understand this properly, it helps to separate four things that we often blur together. Credentials are what you studied: the paper, the diploma, the certificate. Competence is what you can actually do in practice, today, right now. Adaptability is how quickly you can learn something new when circumstances demand it. And learning agility is how effectively you can acquire new knowledge and immediately apply it to a real problem. Here's the shift. The last two, adaptability and learning agility, are becoming increasingly important in a career environment that keeps changing shape. Research from the World Economic Forum specifically highlights the growing importance of technology skills alongside human skills like analytical thinking, resilience, flexibility, and leadership. In other words, it's not credentials versus skills. It's credentials plus the ongoing ability to keep updating those skills. The half-life of skills. Let's borrow a concept from chemistry for a moment, because it explains something career advice rarely explains well. In physics, a half-life is the time it takes for half of a radioactive substance to decay. Skills work in a strangely similar way. A skill doesn't necessarily become completely useless overnight, but its relative value in the market can quietly decline over time. Picture someone who mastered a particular piece of software 10 years ago. Back then, that skill made them incredibly valuable. Maybe the most valuable person on the team. But if the entire industry gradually shifts to a different tool, their years of experience with the old system don't disappear. Their memory of it is still real, but its market value has changed, sometimes dramatically. And this creates an uncomfortable question worth sitting with. What happens when your experience grows faster than your ability to adapt? Because here's a paradox many people don't expect. More experience does not automatically equal more value. It only equals more value when it's paired with continued adaptability. So instead of the old equation, let's write a new one together. And I want you to repeat it out loud once you hear it. Experience multiplied by adaptability equals long-term career value. Say it again, slowly, in your own words if you want. That sentence is the emotional center of everything we're going to build on for the rest of this episode. AI isn't just replacing jobs, it's changing what jobs mean. Let's talk about the topic everyone is thinking about anyway. Artificial intelligence. I want to avoid two extreme reactions here. One extreme says AI will destroy every job and we should all panic. The other extreme says AI changes nothing and it's just hype. Neither of those is accurate. The truth is more layered and, honestly, more useful. There are three different things that can happen to a role because of AI, and they are not the same thing. The first is automation, where certain tasks disappear completely because a machine now does them faster and cheaper. The second is augmentation, where AI helps a person do their existing tasks better, faster, or with fewer errors, without replacing the person. The third is transformation, where the entire role changes shape. Some old responsibilities fade away, and new ones appear that didn't exist before. The World Economic Forum projects significant job disruption by 2030, but, in the same research, it also projects substantial job creation. Roughly 170 million new roles, alongside 92 million displaced roles in its global forecast. That's not a story of pure destruction. It's a story of a labor market reshuffling itself. And IBM's research on this points in a similar direction. Many executives expect generative AI to augment jobs rather than simply eliminate them, which reinforces a very practical idea. The real skill to build isn't fearing AI, it's learning how to work alongside it. The most dangerous career sentence. Now let's talk about a mindset that quietly damages careers more than most people realize. The sentence is, "That's not my job." You've probably heard versions of it, maybe even said them yourself. "I don't need to understand AI. That's the IT department's responsibility. I've been doing this for 15 years. I know what I'm doing. We've always done it this way. I'm too old to learn this now." Here's the important nuance. The problem was never the experience itself. 15 years of experience is not a weakness. The real problem is when identity becomes fused with old methods. When "I am good at my job" quietly turns into "I am this specific method," and questioning the method feels like questioning me. Don't become obsolete while defending your expertise. This next part is genuinely one of the more psychologically interesting ideas in this whole episode. So let's slow down. Experienced professionals sometimes resist change, not because they're stubborn people, but because change can quietly threaten identity. Imagine the internal thought, even if it never gets said out loud. If this new technology can do what I spent 10 years learning how to do, what does that say about me? That question can create real anxiety, and I don't want to minimize it. But here's a more accurate answer to that question. Your value was never just the tool. Your deeper value comes from things a tool doesn't replace easily. Your judgment, your accumulated context, your communication skills, your problem-solving instincts, your leadership, your creativity, your relationships, your decision-making under uncertainty. Technology changes. Tools get replaced by newer tools all the time. But your ability to think clearly and adapt intelligently can remain the constant underneath all of that change. Learning how to learn. So if the old strategy of learn once, coast forever isn't reliable anymore, what replaces it? This is where we move from the problem to the solution. I'm not going to give you the lazy advice of just keep learning, because that phrase is so vague it's almost useless. Let's actually define what lifelong learning means in practice. It means learning continuously, but not necessarily for 5 hours every single day. Sustainability matters more than intensity. It means learning strategically, not chasing every single trend that appears on your feed. It means learning relevant skills, ones that actually connect to where your career is heading. It means learning by doing, because real projects teach you more than passively watching another tutorial ever will. It means learning from feedback, treating your mistakes as information rather than as evidence of failure. And it means learning publicly, in a way that builds visible evidence of your skills over time, rather than keeping everything you know locked inside your own head. The T-shaped professional. Here's a visual model that career researchers use, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The T-shaped professional. Picture the letter T. The vertical line represents deep expertise in one specific area. Your specialty, the thing you're genuinely excellent at. The horizontal line represents a broader understanding of related areas surrounding that specialty. Let's make this concrete. A marketer shouldn't only understand marketing in isolation. They benefit enormously from also understanding a bit of AI, a bit of data, a bit of psychology, communication, content strategy, and general technology trends. A software developer benefits from understanding communication, product thinking, business fundamentals, AI tools, and leadership, not just programming syntax. The future increasingly favors people who combine real depth in one area with genuine breadth across several connected areas. Skills that work together. Building on that T-shape idea, here's a very practical strategy. Instead of collecting random, disconnected skills, build combinations that reinforce each other. Think about pairs like English plus technology, programming plus business, marketing plus psychology, design plus AI, data plus communication, finance plus technology, or leadership plus emotional intelligence? Here's why this matters so much. A single skill on its own is often common. Thousands, sometimes millions of people share that exact skill. But a unique combination of 2 or 3 skills makes you dramatically harder to replace, because fewer people occupy that specific intersection. Pause for a second and ask yourself out loud, what 2 skills do I already have that almost nobody else combines? Human skills become more valuable, not less. Here's where this episode becomes a bit more sophisticated than the usual AI will take your job conversation. AI is remarkably good at generating information, drafting text, analyzing data, and producing options quickly. But humans still carry responsibilities that remain stubbornly human. Making judgment calls in ambiguous situations, building genuine trust with other people, communicating with real empathy, negotiating, leading teams through uncertainty, understanding emotions, handling ambiguity when there's no clear right answer, making ethical decisions, collaborating across differences, and inspiring other people to act. The World Economic Forum's research places skills like creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, agility, leadership, and collaboration right alongside rapidly growing technology skills, not beneath them. So the real story of the future probably isn't humans versus AI. It's more accurate and honestly more empowering to frame it as people who know how to work with AI versus people who don't. Become a fast adapter, not a permanent expert. Let's challenge one more deeply held idea, the goal of becoming the expert who knows everything and never needs to update again. I'd like to offer a replacement goal. Become someone who can become competent quickly, again and again, whenever circumstances demand it. This is a genuine mindset shift, and it changes where your confidence comes from. Instead of your confidence resting on, I already know everything I'll ever need, it can rest on something much sturdier. Whatever happens next, I know how to learn it. That second sentence is what creates real career resilience, the kind that survives industry shifts instead of being destroyed by them. The new career equation. Let's put this into a simple, memorable framework you can actually carry with you. The old equation looked like this: degree plus experience equals career security. The new equation looks like this: foundation plus adaptability plus learning plus execution equals career resilience. And maybe the single most important sentence in this entire episode is this one: your greatest career asset isn't what you know today. It's your ability to learn what tomorrow requires. Say that sentence slowly, in English, right now, in your own words if you'd like. That's the core message we're building this entire episode around. How to know what you should learn. This is where the episode becomes genuinely practical instead of just inspiring, because inspiration without direction doesn't help anyone for very long. Here are 7 questions worth asking yourself regularly. What is changing in my industry right now? What tasks in my field are becoming automated? What skills are becoming more valuable as a result? What skills are quietly becoming less valuable? What problems will companies still need actual humans to solve, no matter how advanced the technology gets? What piece of technology could make me dramatically more productive if I actually learned it properly? And finally, what additional skill would make my current, existing skill more valuable, rather than replacing it entirely? That last question is often the most useful one, because it doesn't ask you to abandon what you've already built. It asks you to extend it. The 70-20-10 Career Learning Model. Here's a practical framework borrowed from learning and development research, adapted for careers. 70% of real learning happens through work itself, through projects, real problems, and experiments where the stakes are genuine. 20% happens through people, mentors, colleagues, communities, and experts who can show you things no course ever could. And only 10% happens through formal learning, courses, books, certificates, and workshops. The message underneath this ratio is simple but important. Don't spend your entire life preparing to work. Learn while you're actually working. The monthly career audit. Let's give this some structure with a simple, repeatable exercise. Once a month, ask yourself a short set of questions. What did I learn this month? What did I actually build? What became easier for me than it used to be? What changed in my industry recently? What piece of technology should I understand better? What skill am I currently missing? And what should I stop doing altogether? This turns lifelong learning from a vague aspiration into something concrete you can actually check on, the same way you'd check a budget or a fitness goal. Don't become a professional course collector. Here's an important warning, and I say this with real care, because I think a lot of ambitious, well-meaning people fall into exactly this trap. Some people consume 50 YouTube videos, 20 online courses, 10 books, and 5 certificates, but build absolutely nothing with any of it. Information without application creates the illusion of progress. It feels productive. It feels like growth. But watching a course about public speaking is not the same as actually speaking in public. The better cycle looks like this: learn, then practice, then build something real, then receive honest feedback, then improve based on that feedback, then apply it again in a new context. Notice that learning is only the first step in that cycle, not the whole cycle. Unlearning is part of learning. Here's a genuinely philosophical idea worth sitting with for a moment. Sometimes you don't need to acquire another skill at all. Sometimes what you actually need is to abandon an outdated belief that's quietly holding you back. Consider a few examples. Working longer hours automatically means working better. The most experienced person in the room is always the most valuable one. Technology will never really affect my particular profession. I need someone's permission before I'm allowed to start. My degree defines the entire shape of my career. I have to know absolutely everything before I'm allowed to begin. Here's the distinction worth remembering. Learning adds new knowledge. Unlearning removes old limitations. And relearning prepares you for whatever comes next. All three are part of the same ongoing process, not separate, optional activities. What about people who are already mid-career? I want to speak directly to anyone listening who's thinking, this all sounds nice, but I'm already 15 or 20 years into my career. Isn't it too late for me? It isn't, and here's why. I'm not going to tell you to start over from zero. That advice is both unrealistic and honestly a little disrespectful of everything you've already built. Instead, build on what you already know. Your experience is a genuine advantage, not a liability, as long as you combine it with what's emerging now. Think of it this way. Combine existing expertise with emergent technology, rather than treating old expertise and new technology as enemies fighting for the same space. A 15-year accountant who learns how to use AI tools isn't becoming a beginner again. They're becoming an accountant who knows how to use AI. And that's a genuinely different and often more valuable position than either the traditional accountant or a fresh graduate who only knows the technology but lacks the professional judgment. Don't chase every new trend. Now, an important balancing point, because I don't want this episode to leave you feeling like you need to learn absolutely everything. Lifelong learning does not mean learning everything, because that's simply impossible, and trying to do it will exhaust you without making you more valuable. Instead, follow the signal, not the noise. Before diving into a new skill or tool, ask yourself, does this actually affect my industry? Does it affect my customers or clients? Does it affect my specific role? Can it meaningfully increase my productivity? Will this skill still matter 3 years from now, or is it a passing trend? And does learning it strengthen the expertise I already have, or does it pull me in a completely unrelated direction? This kind of filtering protects you from what researchers sometimes call shiny object syndrome, the constant, exhausting chase after whatever looks new and exciting this week. Build a career portfolio, not just a resume. Here's a modern concept worth adopting deliberately. A resume says, "Here is what I have done." A portfolio demonstrates something more powerful. Here is what I can actually do. Consider building things like real projects, case studies, writing samples, presentations, code repositories, videos, relevant certifications, and measurable achievements you can point to directly. The underlying goal is evidence of capability, not just a list of claims about yourself. The career you build today may not be the career you retire from. This is meant to be an emotional turning point in the episode, so let's slow down here. Picture someone whose career gradually evolves over time, not through one dramatic leap, but through a series of natural steps. A teacher becomes a content creator, then a course designer, then eventually an entrepreneur. A developer becomes a product manager, then later a founder. A writer becomes a marketer, then a creator with their own audience. None of these people abandoned their original skills. They built on top of them, layer by layer. The message here is simple but genuinely freeing. Your first career doesn't have to be your final identity. Become comfortable being a beginner again. One of the biggest barriers to lifelong learning isn't a lack of time or resources. It's ego. You were once genuinely competent at something. Now you're learning something new, and suddenly you feel slow again. You make mistakes in front of people who might be younger or less experienced than you. You feel embarrassed. I want to normalize that feeling completely, because it's an entirely predictable part of growth, not a sign that something has gone wrong. The ability to say out loud, "I don't know this yet," is not a weakness to hide. It's genuinely a career strength, and one that fewer people than you'd expect are actually willing to demonstrate. Your career is now a continuous experiment. Let's introduce one final mindset shift before we move toward the practical summary. Instead of asking the old question, "What career should I choose?" as if there's one final permanent answer waiting to be discovered, try asking a different question. What can I test? You can experiment with small projects, freelance work on the side, short courses, new AI tools, side projects that scratch a creative itch, deliberate networking, public writing, or simply volunteering for new responsibilities at your current job. Small, low-risk experiments can reveal genuine opportunities that pure planning, done entirely inside your own head, simply cannot. 5 skills everyone should develop. Let's bring this together into a clear, memorable summary. 5 skills worth developing no matter what industry you're in. First, learning ability. Can you learn quickly when circumstances require it? Second, adaptability. Can you genuinely adjust when conditions change around you? Third, communication. Can you explain your ideas clearly to other people, including people outside your specific field? Fourth, technology fluency. Can you work effectively alongside modern tools, including AI, without either fearing them or blindly trusting them? And fifth, human judgment. Can you make good decisions in situations where there's no obvious textbook answer available? Let's slow all the way down for a moment. I'd like you to genuinely ask yourself a few questions, out loud if you can. What skill did you learn 5 years ago that you still depend on today? And is it still as valuable as it used to be? What's currently changing in your industry that you've been quietly avoiding thinking about? What skill are you currently avoiding learning? Maybe because it feels intimidating or unfamiliar. And here's the biggest one. If your industry completely changed tomorrow, would you actually know how to adapt? Here's the key message underneath all of it. Don't build your career around the assumption that the world will stay the same. Build it around the confidence that you can change along with it. Maybe the future doesn't belong to the person who knows the most. Maybe it belongs to the person who can keep learning. The person who can let go of an old method when it's no longer serving them. The person who can become a beginner again, without their identity collapsing because of it. The person who isn't afraid to say, "I don't know, but I can learn." Because the goal of a modern career isn't to become permanently qualified once and then stop. It's to remain permanently capable of becoming qualified for whatever comes next. If this episode changed the way you think about your career, even a little, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what is one skill you know you need to learn next? And if you're improving your English while also building a better future for yourself, subscribe to Code Your English. Here, we don't just learn English. We learn how to think, communicate, adapt, and grow. Thank you for spending this time with me. Keep learning, keep adapting, and most importantly, never stop becoming the person your future needs.